Hello and welcome into the Coach on the Couch podcast with your hosts, Martin Fleming and Stephen Alexander Simmons. This fortnightly podcast covers various topics relating to subjects from career and work, health, nutrition and well-being to parenting, relationships, and much more. Each episode will deal with a particular area of these. So, if you are interested in learning and hearing some different thoughts, ideas, and even get some tips or helpful suggestions on these areas of life, or perhaps you are into self-development, then we hope you will stay with us and hopefully enjoy a fun, insightful, and what we hope will be an interesting discussion for you.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Coach on the Couch. In this episode, I'm going to be joined again by Stephen Alexander Simmons. So it'd be good to have him back to discuss things as usual. It's been a little while since he's been able to join me for an episode. But hopefully he'll be back for this one and other future episodes as usual. So in this episode we are hoping to discuss and look at discussing and exploring the subject of control, kind of who has control. Are we controlled? Sometimes we feel we're controlled, even if it's indirect control. We don't always feel in control, and who really has that control? Another side of that is it that we are really controlled, or do we, can we take back some of that? Do we have a choice? Can we find choice and find some control of our own in that? We explore some various different aspect of control, hopefully, and it should be quite an interesting discussion. So with that all being said, let's get straight into the episode and hope you enjoy it. Welcome back, and it's been a long time since you've been on my couch, Steve.
Yeah, that doesn't sound rude.
I know it doesn't, but there you go. I couldn't think of any other way of saying it, but yes, it's been a while. Feels ages ago since you were last here. So I know earlier you and when I was thinking of ideas, you said about kind of maybe we could do something around control. So what did you have in mind for that as such? I was just wondering what your thoughts were around that.
Well, for me, there's a lot of things going on around power and control, in the sense that I had this really strong vision of a puppet on a string, and this sense on who is controlling our strings, in the sense of, whose puppet are we, and those who control the strings control the power. And it kind of got me thinking about, well, who in my life at the moment controls my strings, and it's a bit of an odd thing to think about, but when you think about it, there's probably lots of people that we don't realise kind of have this power and control over us. So for me at the moment, for example, there's a car loan going on. So there's the car loan company, for example. There's maybe the utilities company. There's maybe there's a phone company as well. So for me, it was about how do I get out of contract? Because when you're in these contracts, sometimes you get involved in these hidden contracts that you're not even aware of. So for example, I didn't know that when I got my phone out, it's now considered a loan. It's not just a contract, it's actually a loan. And then you have this loan over a period of 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is. And so if you want to come out of that, you have to kind of pay the company off, or whoever it is, this substantial amount of money. So when I said to my phone company, I want to, finish with you, suddenly the way they keep you locked in is by saying, well, actually, there's this huge amount of money that you owe to get out of that. And so what they do is, because they know that most people don't have that large amount of money, they know they can lock people in, unless you can just afford to buy yourself out. And that for me was kind of one form of control. And we know, don't we, at the moment, we've got the whole kind of gas and utilities and electric thing going on, and how much people are being held hostage with their electric companies. And what can we do? So for me, it's about thinking, well, how can we regain control? And it's not just utility companies. I'm thinking like kind of in relationships as well. Who has the power and control in relationships? And a lot of people don't realise that there's this power and control going on, because we've become so compliant, we've become so used to it, we've just kind of accepted it. And by accepting, I mean, like, we know something's not right because we grumble about it, we might get upset about it, but then that's as far as it goes, because we've come to a stage, either mentally or emotionally, where we do not have the strength, if you like, to challenge it, because we feel, well, what's the point? There's no point in carrying on, because nothing's going to happen. There's no change that's going to happen. And you know yourself that change isn't going to happen if changes don't happen. And so this kind of got me thinking about, well, actually, is this a bigger issue that we're not talking about, or maybe that people have just given up? And so kind of a lot of these ideas were floating around in my head of this concept of freedom. What does it mean to be free of all these controls? Which kind of brought me straight back around to those who have the strings have the power. So that was where my thinking was, and about how easily we are led, subconsciously or consciously, whether we're aware of it or not. And so for me, it was about how can we A, wake people up to it, and B, how can we empower people to be released from that. So it's almost like a way of, it's almost like modern slavery without being labelled as slavery. Do you know what I mean? So we're kind of enslaved in some sort of matrixy system here. So how can we get unplugged from the matrix, so to speak?
Some people might not want to. Some people might enjoy being controlled.
Do you know what? That is a very good question, actually. Well, not a question.
So all the time you're seeking to lessen that control and talk about freedom, there's people that might enjoy that control.
Because the thing with control, it has a sense of rules, and it has a sense of boundaries, and within that, and structures. And so whether people like it or not, there's some safety within that, because like little robots, they as long as they know what they're supposed to be doing, they can carry on. Do you know what I mean? And then they know that, if I do this, then obviously there might be some consequences, but generally I can just do it.
Some people also don't like making decisions, so they'd rather someone else take that control.
Yes, so, this is also true.
So there's that side of things. There's very passive people, and people that just would rather just sit back. Everyone else has the control, and they'll just trundle along with whatever's done. So that kind of, there's a lot of little factors in the control thing that come into probably stuff we've already done. So as I say, like people who don't want to make decisions and all about decisions, and it's can liking control can be a way of shirking responsibility, right? So it can be if I wanted you to be all controlling and make all the decisions, then I don't need to think about it, and if something goes wrong, it's not my fault. So there's that side. The other angle that I'll throw in there is also there's control that can happen indirectly, would be probably the way I put it. So for example, if you have to rely on people, or you've been told something's going to happen and it doesn't happen, or you're even to the degree, even as a basic as, I was talking to someone the other day about deliveries, right, for example. So there's you get a lot of things where you book these deliveries and you're told, okay, this is going to arrive between 8 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock in the evening. It's like, well, hang on, I've got to stay in all day. I can't do anything else because I've got to be here, because I don't know when it's turning up. So it's control without being a direct control, if you see what I mean. So it's even with those, it's like, what can you do? Now, for me, I think it comes back to a certain level of perception.
In what sense?
Because is it real control? Do you have no control over any of it? Has that control completely been taken away from you? So even your examples, for instance, right? So now, there's some things that are written into a contract, and I know what you mean, but there's other aspects of contractual stuff that, if it's not met, there are legal avenues you can do, or things that you can throw at organizations with regards to your consumer rights and things like that. But it's like, if you're, it's a question again. It's like with reliance. If you're relying on people, it's like, well, the only bit of control you have is, I suppose, you'd have to make things clear, and you have to it's about putting boundaries and ground rules down. Some of us are better at that than others. So where I go with that, with the perception of it, is like, because if you just reside yourself to saying, okay, well, this is out of my control, it's like I can't do anything about it, then, well, don't moan about it, because it's, well, you can, but that's the bit of control you have anyway. That's your choice you have. If you want to moan about it, but like, it's not going to get you anywhere anyway. It's not very productive. But if you just consider yourself as being, that's it, I'm controlled, then you're never going to be free anyway. You look at prisoners and stuff like that. What was it? Like, because you mentioned about freedom and stuff. You look at Nelson Mandela. He always said, like, even though he was incarcerated for all those years or whatever, he was always still free, because it's your attitude and your mental state that allows you to kind of, say whether, he's still held on to his beliefs and all the rest of it. So it's like, so your perception of control is like, depends on what it is. If you just feel you're being controlled and you've just said, okay, well, that's it, then you've given up already. You're not going to have any freedom, because you won't see that. because your perception is, well, I'm being controlled, and you've given into that. So, and then that comes back to being a choice. So we've done about choice, or I did about choice. So, you know, I like my choice. You know, I'm all into choice. So, so it's like, if you choose to be controlled, then, you know, again, that all draws on that perception. That's a choice that you make. If you choose not to be controlled and not to, you know, be put down or whatever, there's no reason why there can't be. If you choose that can't be the only thing. Now, you might not be able to change it all, just the same as, you know, the government is the government. The issues that we're going through with the economy in this country and all the other stuff, unless we're in politics, we can't particularly change, but we can change the way we live ourselves, and we can, how we look at things, and we can just do the stuff that we can do to make sure our own lives are okay. And that's all you can do. You've got to take control, and you've got to of your own stuff and what you can take control of, and that's, you know, that's a state of mind and a choice if you make that choice. So, so that's where, you know, that's kind of an aspect that I kind of think about control.
I think it's good to have that different perspective, isn't it? Because, like you said, there are some people who actually like to be told what to do. And I find it ironic that I'm kind of at this stage now, and I think it's because maybe I was triggered or something, and maybe something kind of touched a nerve, because I used to be comfortable in allowing people to tell me what to do, and I might grumble about it, but I also allowed it because, again, there's that no sense of responsibility. There was no decision making I had to do. You know, if anything went wrong, well, it wasn't my fault. Unless, you know, you're in a marriage or relationship, then everything's your fault. But
that's whether you're making the decisions or not.
Whether you're making a decision or not, that's correct. And it's interesting. I think I've come full circle now, where I'm like, well, actually, I want to be in the driver's seat. You know, I don't want to be. You know, earlier we were talking about the difference between being employed and being self-employed. And I don't want to be in a position where I want to have somebody telling me what to do, because I've always struggled having people tell me what to do. I always fight against that. But again, I'm also very compliant, so whether I like it or not, I always end up doing it. But now I've come to a mental state where I'm like, do you know what? I'm not going to be told what to do. I don't want to be told what to do. So therefore, if I feel like I'm being told what to do, then my defense system is going to come straight up and go, well, hold on a minute, what's happening here? And so I think for me it's about recognizing that actually I think there is that difference of people out there, isn't there? There's the people, like you said, that want to be controlled and don't want to have that responsibility, but there are going to be other people who actually want to say, well, do you know what, I'm fed up of being controlled by other people, so therefore I need help to do it. Now, at the moment, I support a lot of people who've been in domestic abuse, and those who've been involved in domestic abuse have got all sorts of traumas, and even though they're no longer in that relationship, they're still controlled by that relationship because it was such an abusive relationship. Do you know what I mean? So there are people who still carry on doing stuff even though they're no longer in that relationship because it was so indoctrinated in them. So for me, I'm looking at ways, well, how can I support people in those situations who want to be free of those situations, but for whatever reason are still trapped in them.
I'm going to be very controversial, and I mean, I do agree with you, and I mean, obviously, I've not worked directly within that field, but I've worked with aspects of stuff to do with that. But just for definitely because I love playing devil's advocate, and for the purpose of the podcast and throwing ideas around, I'm going to be controversial and say that even with that, and what you say about that, there's still a choice to make. So, and even after a situation like that, the choice you make to whether you want to live without, and you're going to carry on doing those things or not do those things or whatever, it's about a choice. So you still, especially if you're outside of that environment now, then you still have that choice. That's a personal choice of that person, whether they do or do not do something. So I get the whole kind of psychological kind of programming or whatever, however you want to kind of call it, but if they've managed to make that one step and make that choice to get out in the first place, and they're now outside of that environment, even though however bad it was, as I say, I'm not I'm not disrespecting the whole thing of that, but where they go from there is also a choice. So, and if, for example, if they're coming to you, for example, for help, then if that's a choice they've made for you to help them, then they have to make that choice to do whatever it is that they got to do. So we kind of come back to that usual phrase with therapies and stuff is, you know, unless they really want it, it's not going to work anyway. So they've got to make that positive and a firm choice to want whatever it is. Kind of change, well, not in terms of the topic, changing tack slightly, coming off of that a little bit, because as I say, it's a very kind of controversial and very kind of, it can be a very emotive subject, but the other control you can have, and in terms of perception, when I was saying about perception, is it's not only about people, it's about situations. And if you choose that, well, that situation's going to, you know, I can't do this because of, or whatever, and again, you've got choices about what you do have control over. So as simple as the last few weeks since you've been ill, Steve, I mean, it's like I could have the first time you were ill, that episode we didn't do an episode. Then 2 weeks later, you were still ill, and one thing another. Now I could have sat back and I could have just went, oh well, you know, we usually do it together. I won't, you know, and let that whole situation control what I did. But I chose otherwise, and I chose to do one just on my own, just so we could get another episode out and stuff. So there's also about situations and how you look at situations and your environment and stuff. So I don't know what you think of any of that.
You're right. I think there comes a point where you kind of have to start making these decisions for yourself, whether you decide to almost like break free from whatever you're doing, or whether you choose to actually stay in there. And like you said, it you know, I'm thinking back to some of the abuse situations and stuff like that. And one of my frustrations is dealing with people is, you know, if the situation is as bad as you say it is, which of course, you know, it often is, then why are you still in that situation?
Yeah.
And especially, you know, as a man, I struggle with this when women are kind of in these situations, because I'm like, well, you know, there's that protector inside me wants to kind of like protect them and say, look, you know this isn't right, but why are you still in there? And a lot of them kind of will say, well, I feel trapped, or better the devil you know than the devil you don't, or because they've been so conditioned, they don't know anything else outside of that, or because their support structures have been taken away from them. So because there's that control again, so they don't have that friends network, they might not know a professional network, for example. And that fear has been instilled into them.
I mean, there's also the whole psychological thing that they're made to believe it's their fault or whatever. So, and I mean, it's still a psychological hold and control. But and that's why the choice and the point is always so difficult, because if they're still in it, and you're saying, well, if it's that bad, why? It's if they're not ready at that point, then they won't do it. No matter what they say about it, they just won't move. Those situations usually come to a particular trigger point of when that's it, and they're able to make that move and that choice. So, I mean, we're verging on getting into domestic abuse here and topics around domestic abuse, but yeah.
I think what I've learned, again, just talking to you, I think, is that reminder that there's always going to be that different perspective. There's always going to be that different side of the coin. So, for example, whatever side or angle I might be coming back, there's going to be that other side that actually says, well, actually, I might not like it, but I'm comfortable with that. And I relate that to the kind of the politics situation. Like, for example, everyone might grumble about the whole Tories being in control, for example. But these same people who are moaning won't go out and vote, or they won't go and be a politician themselves.
Yeah, or they won't vote against them. I mean, it's a little bit like this. The situation in America with apparently Donald Trump is now kind of he's looking to run again, and apparently he's got lots of support, but everyone kind of wasn't very happy when he was in, and how he was, and various things like that. So, but there's nothing to say he wouldn't get in again if he's got all this support opposed to the other candidates, whatever. And as I say, yeah, I mean, like you say, we have similar situations here. It's like people talk about the Conservative Party and Conservative government, but then if it came to an election, who would they vote in? They usually then vote the Conservatives in again. So it's like, that's makes it doesn't seem to make any sense, but yeah, it's that's, I don't know, I suppose it comes back to that better the devil you know thing, isn't it? Rather than but I mean, obviously, if you don't want whatever it is you're moaning about, then it's that's where the taking back control thing is. And if you're given that opportunity to do it, but you don't do it, then really, one can only presume that a person's comfortable with that and happy to be like that, despite whatever they're also voicing at the same time. So it's like they're obviously saying one thing and being wanting to be like another. So
I mean, it just goes to prove, isn't it, that the topic itself, it's so much deeper, isn't it? It's not one of these kind of quick fix solutions. It's not a quick wham bam thank you ma'am, one size fits all thing. And what made me think about that is, I saw a post the other day about, I don't, and somebody just put a post up saying, I don't believe in democracy. And then, the trigger part of me wanted to say, well, what's the alternative to democracy then? Which would be something like dictatorship.
Or communism.
Yeah, exactly. And then, how would those people react if that was in place? Well, they'd soon have something to say about that, do you know what I mean? And so it kind of comes back again to that whole...
my question, I suppose my counter question to that would be, yes, I agree with you that what you would ask back, but my other question to that would be, what do they believe in then? If they don't believe in what is it that they believe in? Because, like I always say, it's it doesn't matter what system you have. you know, it's like communism and all that's all based on the philosophy, the foundational philosophy always sounds really good, right? So it's everyone's equal, whatever, but in practice and in reality it doesn't work, because you always have to have someone in power and someone well, for the purpose of this podcast, in control. So you've always got to, so in a system where everyone's meant to be equal, it doesn't work, because you've still got to have someone taking charge. So so for someone to then, you know, so it's like, well, okay, so what does that person believe in? Is it that they just don't believe in the whole, you know, they don't want someone in charge, or they don't believe that things are fair or equal? I mean, that post itself, it doesn't really tell you much apart from they don't believe in democracy, but you know, what is it they do believe in, and why are they posting that? Is it what are they trying to put across? But there's always going to be an element of someone in charge and in control, and sometimes, well, and then in some aspect, in some things.
Sorry, I just sneezed. Sorry, pudding.
And in some cases, you know, several things, it's also a really important thing to have as well, to have those levels of power or those levels of control, whether that's military or in the military. You know, obviously there's structures within the military, and you've got to have that for things to work and to run well and stuff like that. You know, you'd have that if we look at things like, you know, even working within a nuclear plant, for example, power station or something, you've got to have levels of control and levels of, you know, because if you don't, then big disasters are going to happen. So, so I think, again, I mean, so on the basis of control, I think it can be a good thing. It can be a positive as well as a negative, like a lot of things can be. It just depends on how it's used and what it's used for. I would say, but
I think it kind of lends itself to a kind of a part 2 or a part 3, doesn't it, really? Because I think there's so many different streams and avenues that you can go down just within this topic itself. You know, I thought, oh, this is quite a simple topic, actually. We can just, you know, knock it out and we can kind of come to a simple, oh, you know, this is a great solution, there you go. But actually, it just goes to prove once again that once you start to explore certain things, that actually it's like a kind of a rabbit warren, isn't there, really? You can kind of go down so many like little avenues and stuff like that. But actually what I do like about it is that there's plenty of opportunity and scope within that to say, well, actually, I think you can help people on both sides of the fence, so to speak, or multiple sides of the fences, as we've kind of just explored in this one topic. I think there's so many different angles that you can come at it from, and I think that's kind of like opened my mind to that, actually. But also reinforce where I'm at, I think, as well. So I think it's been quite useful, I think, even for my own journey and self-exploration, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, we it's like situational things. I mean, like myself, I felt ransomed to and controlled it with certain things because I've been relying on tradespeople and things like that. So, but I had to get to a point where I just thought, right, that I've just got to take that kind of decision making back now, and kind of, you know, if the work's not being done, then, you know, either getting someone else in, or, you know, my issue is I'd already changed a tradesperson once already. I don't have, you know, endless amounts of money to be spending out again for a third time, making the work that I've got to have done like 3 times as much expensive as it needed to have been. So, but my choices were, do I stay with that person and just, I don't know, just wait until it actually ever got done, or do I kind of find some other solution to that, and whatever else. So situationally you can feel ransom to stuff, but a bit like I said in the last episode about choices, I think it's a question of then sitting back and going, well, okay, what can I change about that, and what do I have control over? But we've spoken about so many different aspects of being controlled that sometimes some of that's not easy either. So and it involves a lot of other things as well. So it's not just, well, the topic isn't just that, or that the outcome isn't just you're either controlled or you're not. I think there's a lot of other little factors involved there, really. So that's
I think there's a lot to take out. There's a lot to take away, I think. But also, I think just to remind people that I think that, if ever they want help to either get out of the situation and stuff like that, I think there's always help available, and not to be afraid to reach out and ask for help.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, thanks for that, Steve. Thanks again for another episode. Hope it won't be so long till you're here again. But try not to get ill for 6 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
But so until next time, thanks everyone for listening, and thank you again, Steve. And,
thank you for having me.
Yeah, and we'll be back soon. Bye for now. Hello and welcome back again to this roundup and recap of the episode. So I hope you enjoyed the discussion and kind of the various different aspects of the whole subject of control, who controls, and whether is it situational, where we feel we don't have any control, is it situations taking over, is it people, is it obviously if you feel out of control, you feel that you need some kind of help with various things, such as we did discuss briefly, kind of just around domestic abuse. Now, obviously, we didn't go into lots to do with that, and it was just a discussion around control. So we just touched upon domestic abuse, and so there wasn't really any judgment, there's no judgments in it, no opinion, proper opinions. We were just discussing different aspects of control and the different angles. And I myself put kind of a different spin on the whole kind of whether it's a choice or not, and brought that into the kind of topic of domestic abuse. But it's not that was my personal view, and if anyone is in a position where they need help on that, then please do seek it out. There is plenty of services out there and help to be given if you're in any kind of situation such as that. So I just wanted to kind of make that disclaimer and say that, you know, what was mentioned and the viewpoint put over wasn't necessarily, you know, an absolute, and didn't mean that there was no understanding of the topic around domestic abuse. So but please do seek out any help, any support, and even if it's not that, if there's other things that you feel out of control with, finance, relationships, or anything like that, where you feel that you just need some support, then please do seek it out. I still, you know, I hope that we gave you a very interesting discussion there, and that we also, you know, hope to bring you another one very shortly of, you know, another interesting topic. And again, hope you really enjoyed this episode. Now we have Steve back with us, and we look forward to being with you very soon. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the fortnightly Coach on the Couch podcast with your hosts, Martin Fleming and Stephen Alexander Simmons. You can find this podcast on the following platforms: Spotify, Anchor, and Google Podcasts, and more platforms to follow. You can leave comments and feedback directly on the Anchor platform, or you can contact us directly by emailing us at coachonthecouch22@gmail.com. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to being with you soon.